Throughout Super Smash Bros., there's been characters that have had identity crises, whether it's they shoot up all the way to the high tiers of the meta or they end up falling all the way down, or they simply just have a rather mediocre placement in many of the game's lifespans, or they just go at one point and then they just fall off. In this video, we're going to be looking at each Smash game and one character from each game, and make sure to subscribe, by the way. Thank you guys. Now, as far as of all the 64 tier lists, they have the closest characters in viability. So some of the games in this tier list, they are actually really good characters and they're not as bad as a character like in Melee would be. Like a low tier in Melee is a lot worse than a low tier in 64. But it doesn't mean that they're completely unviable or hopeless. I mean, unless you're Ness, but I'm kidding. Now, as far as tier list goes, if you look at almost every single one, Samus, Link, a lot of these characters have just been low tier for many times in a row. But I feel like Samus actually deserves to be talked about because they've appeared 3 times in bottom 3 since 2015, and this is actually where Samus is actually just a little bit more of a tankier character that is slower in 64's meta. They have powerful attacks, they have pretty average range, and they also have access to spacing and zoning tools. I mean, no duh, it's Samus, right? We all know. Some pretty low risk kill moves are in her moveset. She's heavy, but she's also very floaty, and this makes her actually pretty weird to combo at times because she's just really floaty. And also her recovery is incredible with her down special that can actually stall in the air, which is going to help her fall speed a lot. And Samus has one glaring weakness, and that is her overall very slow mobility. Is one of the least mobile characters in the air due to their floatiness and also their poor airspeed. So Samus has no reliable ground or aerial options for opening up opponents. It is most of the time just going to be reversing characters a lot of times. She has quick and fast, easy to land KO moves, also some very predictable attacks that could lead to Samus getting punished. I mean, she's a tank in this game, it makes sense. But she does weigh a lot and she packs a punch, and she's also floaty but just has very poor mobility. Some of the slowest rolls in the game are actually Samus's. This allows her defensive game to be good at times, but it also means at the same time it can also be a flaw in her overall capability. However, she can't zero to death any characters in the game, and she has the slowest grab in the game. It is a tether grab though, so there is that. I don't know, it just feels like a step down compared to some of the other characters when, I don't know, Samus is just Samus. But she does have a really good back throw that can actually KO in this game. In most cases, she does have a high amount of end lag on a lot of her attacks. Now, Samus's down air is a great option for edge guarding, especially against these slower recoveries like Kirby or Jigglypuff, and she has poor, mediocre tools for edge guarding. Outside of that, her primary recovery tool is going to be good old up special. It is a really predictable recovery tool. It is very poor vertical recovery. For the longest time, Samus was actually seen as a bottom tier character, frequently considered the worst out of the whole cast. But the reason is that the negative perception is sort of went back and forth over the years, as some people think her lacking of any zero to death combos is a huge thing that just holds her back, her laggy attack, not having the most reliable KO tools at points. But there are some positive perceptions to the character, especially these days, although she still struggles against many of the high tier characters in this game, as they're just way faster than her and the recoveries are just crazy. I mean, look at Pikachu. But while for right now, I would say being at 8th place is not really that bad compared to some of the other characters in this video, but just know it could be better. Now, as far as Zelda and Melee, she is technically a pretty iconic joke character in a lot of people's opinion. Zelda being on this tier list is a bit of a meme. I mean, technically she's ranked as a high tier during Melee's early years, but yeah, people barely knew how to play the game. People didn't even know how to wave dash or L cancel that consistently. And another reason was people didn't know if Sheik and Zelda should be ranked as separate characters or not. So that's why Zelda kind of has this really silly placement. However, there were people that have tried to push Zelda, and despite this, throughout all the years, she's been really, really stagnant. I feel like this is probably one of the strangest characters in Melee because of how poorly designed she is. Sheik is actually leagues better than Zelda, and I mean, this is not technically supposed to be the case, as Zelda is hard-hitting and slower character, but Sheik is supposed to be the faster and weaker character. However, this sort of cancels each other out, as these two characters aren't really designed that well if you're trying to take their archetype in mind. Zelda's survivability is actually horrible. She is really floaty and dies to strong hits really easily. She is one of the lightest characters in the game, while Sheik honestly is also pretty poorly designed because ironically Sheik is really good at killing, better than Zelda is at times. It might not be as strong as Zelda's best moves like fair and back air, but Sheik's strengths and speed are perfectly fine. And you can clearly see how hard Sheik was nerfed KO power-wise immediately in Brawl to see that, yeah, they clearly did something wrong. This was definitely intentional, but Zelda is just in a weird place as she has one of the best down specials in the game as, yeah, you become the much better character, but Zelda on her own is a really, really bad character. And Zelda has beefy attacks with fair and back air, but they're not easy to hit. Their sweet spots are tiny, and they're also incredibly laggy attack. It's not going to be easy to really punish with Zelda as compared to like Sheik. And she just has really awful special moves. Some of the worst special moves in the game, you could argue, go right to Zelda, as outside of down special, neutral B is pretty average. Side special is really poorly designed. It puts her in a lot of end lag. It's way too much startup to be used consistently, and it also is not powerful at all. And for the extra icing on the cake, I mean, it puts Zelda in free fall too for whatever reason, so good luck using it off stage. It does not like facing the spaces at all because they combo her rather effectively, and they take advantage of her poor survivability and floatiness. And even that, the more defensive characters, how is Zelda really going to compete with these characters, as Zelda is eventually just going to be picked off little by little and then eventually killed. So really, she's mostly just a party trick character. And if you want to use Sheik and use Zelda's better recovery, I guess, hey, you have that. But as far as a solo character, she's almost non-existent as a presence in the meta. If you actually do try to main Zelda though, I actually give you a lot of credit because you're essentially playing the game in extreme hard mode. You're better than me, honestly. The real Zelda mains out there, they know that she can actually be decent in the right hands, but she is very, very hard to play. And I think that's always going to hold her back, unfortunately. I respect the hustle though, it's not easy. If you look at Donkey Kong and Brawl, you might not think, oh, how could this character be that bad? I mean, it's Donkey Kong, right? He's huge, and he makes a pretty big target to combo at times, as Donkey Kong was initially seen as a high tier character in Brawl. Buffs also did help DK a lot, as he is better than the melee version of the character. He is really powerful. He actually had a decent sized player base in the early days, as people could utilize his chain grabbing. As the meta develops though, it became more apparent that Donkey Kong's buffs were simply not enough compared to the other characters that were just sort of better at doing what DK was doing. You see, a lot of people were actually not familiar with dealing with camping and Brawl's chain grabbing early on, so as the meta developed, these things became more optimized for the characters that just had really, really good chain grabbing tools. And Donkey Kong being really big and heavy, he did not like dealing with that stuff. Brawl's defensive options like camping and also being a victim to chain grabbing himself dealt a lot of damage to how DK was perceived, so a lot of the other heavyweights who had way better chain grabbing tools and could actually camp, like Snake and King Dedede, for example, they had a huge rise in the meta, while DK definitely became a little less played in the meta because of this. However, this is a much stronger version of DK. His cargo actually gains armor in Brawl and can carry opponents and have a rewarding throws out of cargo like his up and down input. Neutral B actually has armor on it, which is really silly when, yeah, so you use fully charged Neutral B, you get armor. It's kind of insane. And also, if you can really see how early he can kill in this game too, let that be the judge. His up special also goes slightly further in the air. This was a big problem with him in melee, and they actually fixed that. But they did take away his grounded hitboxes on up special. So, and headbutt is actually an excellent setup tool that can actually bury people while in the air. And the meteor hitbox is actually a lot bigger. So even his dash and airspeed are slightly faster. That's going to help him actually keep up with some of the characters in this game because, you know, melee, he was actually a lot slower. They even improved his shield size, which was arguably one of the worst aspects of the character in melee, so there is that too. This is no way me saying DK was unviable or just not seen at all, but really what happened with him is he just became a lot lesser of a presence when a lot of other characters' metas became more developed. I mean, obviously MonteRicard 2 affected things as well, because, you know, it is Brawl at the end of the day. But overall, this wasn't enough to save Donkey Kong, unfortunately. He was still prime meat when it came to dealing with Brawl's campy elements, and plenty of the best characters in the game just had really good matchups against him, and he had to deal with the flaws of just being a big heavyweight character that doesn't like dealing with projectiles. So he did fall rather quickly out of favor. Many of these characters higher than him have stronger defensive options and can just out-camp DK, while he has to wait to gain advantage. This is a big deal, as some of DK's worst matchups in Brawl are a lot of the characters characters that are higher than him and that can play keep away and just, yeah, bully him at times. So he is actually a lot better than the melee version of the character. I do want to make sure that's known, as the buffs to Brawl DK were definitely good, but he's just in the wrong meta. It's a more defensive game, and chain grabbing is a key aspect of Brawl. So if you thought it was going to work out for DK, he would actually have a bit more of a glow up in future Smash games. Obviously in Smash 4, things were just not going to work out, unfortunately, as he would have a fall from being a high tier in the early years to being a mid tier, which is not that bad compared to some other characters out there. It's a lot more difficult for the character, in my opinion, though. So the fact that he can hang in the mid tier shows that he does have plenty of strengths, and they did try to improve the character from previous iteration. The meta just evolved in a way where DK's optimal play was just not as good, which is why he's at the 21st place on the tier list. Now, what if I told you that there was a character that was a DLC character during Smash 4, and they probably had one of the most hyped reactions for a character returning in Smash probably of all time, but their actual viability would be the equivalent of just, yeah, everyone forgot they existed, to be honest. Even the previous iteration of this character was really bad. Roy's return after being cut was like a holiday coming back. It was like seeing Santa for the first time in a long time, okay? I mean, Roy is really popular because, you know, he was in Melee, but his actual game never came out in the West, and a lot of people really just view him as a Smash character. But to be real, Roy not making the cut was pretty sad during Brawl. So it's funny that because Melee Roy was also a bad character for a lot of the same reasons that Smash 4 Roy was. And initially, when the character came out, Roy was seen as actually a promising character at the time. People were picking him up, they noticed the buffs, that down air could actually meteor smash a lot easier. Seemed like he was better at approaching because he had, you know, he was a little bit faster, better air acceleration, but then people realized, oh wait, this is pretty bad again. Roy has really bad approach options, a slow air acceleration, unsafe aerials. Roy is just really bad at spacing. He has a disjointed sword. It actually is really inconvenient because of this sour spot side. He has to get really close to the opponents in order to gain these rewarding aspects of the character, and this really was a big problem with him even in Melee, so they brought that aspect of him forward in this game for whatever reason. And Roy suffers from a really bad recovery, as his up special is pretty bad, and this is also an aspect about him that was pretty bad in Melee too. Also, because he's a fast faller, he is really easy to combo. So he was actually received as like a potentially decent character, but over time people quickly realized that Roy was actually not that good. And the devs did try to fix this, as it just wasn't enough for him to really gain out of these lower tiers. But admittedly, the same exact flaws that he had in Melee exist in Smash 4. Just look how big his sour spots are for his moves. Like, Roy just struggles to gain percent and gain advantage, which is why his current placement is in the E tier. It's a complete 180 from how he ended up getting fixed in Smash Ultimate, where he went from being pretty bad to actually being pretty good in that game. But if you actually look at Marth and you say, oh wow, wait, Ultimate Marth is in this video? If you look at how many games Marth has been good in, and Ultimate, it's the one game where it's actually really hard for Marth, and it's the overall risk-reward system to the character. Now, Marth is defined by his chain grabs in previous Smash games, his movement, his tipper hitboxes, his devastating punish game. I mean, did I mention his sword? But okay, you take away wave dashing and dash dancing, Marth still has a rewarding tipper hitbox. And the one time where he was actually bad, which was Smash 4, they buffed him so much that he became a top tier character. So he like breaks the matrix and then he just like dodges all the bullets for whatever reason. Marth is just good all the time until Smash Ultimate, where it actually started to catch up to him this time around. And he is a shell of his former self. As in Ultimate, it's by far one of the most nerfed versions of Marth in Smash's history. Out of all the sword characters that are in Smash Ultimate, Marth is clearly at a severe disadvantage because he doesn't have as good of hitboxes as he had in previous games, and his tipper hitbox is so much smaller, and this toned down a lot of Marth's rewarding aspects. And his speed is not necessarily bad, but there's so many other characters that are now just as fast as him and can really just do the same thing as Marth, if not better. I mean, he has literal clones of himself now, so if you want to play better characters, you could play Lucina or Roy or Chrom, whatever. They did try to buff him and make him better, but they ultimately just didn't really change that many aspects of the character. And the other sword fighters in the game most of them are just a lot better than Marth is. Even me, sword fighter, is getting a glow up right now, and Marth is still kind of just waiting by the sidelines, just barely a low tier character. I mean, it's pretty sad to see. I know some people might say Roy and Lucina are not really as good as maybe they were peaking at a couple years back, but I still think both of those characters are in a better place than Marth is was ever probably going to be, unfortunately. This is by far one of the hardest aspects of Marth in Ultimate. Is it's just really difficult to gain advantage because hitting a tipper is just really difficult in this game. He has a lot more competition for his archetype. It just overall leaves Marth feeling like he just is not holding up in this game that well. And it's not like he's terrible or anything. I mean, it's literally just the fact that other characters can do what he does a lot better. And this led to Marth having a large drop in representation, a significant drop off from where he was in Ultimate. I mean, I guess technically he was sort of a low tier in early Smash 4 tier list, but you guys get the point. This has been a long time coming from Marth. If you really want to get how much Marth has changed since these early iterations of the character, just play like melee Marth and just try to hit forward smash and see how easy it is. And then compare it to Ultimate, you'll notice Hipper, yeah, is still strong in Ultimate, but it's a lot harder to hit with. And that really does make Marth a harder sell when other characters don't have that downside. This really explains why he is ranked at the bottom of the C- tier and is almost a low tier. Kind of sad to see, I guess, on some level, but unfortunately, there's not going to be a balance patch or anything like that that is going to save Marth. Maybe some players can do that by picking him up more, but we'll really have to see because Marth is really difficult to play, I feel like, in this current meta because there's so many characters just doing what he does, but better. I mean, if you just compare hitting a tipper forward smash in Melee and just how easy it is, and then you compare it all the way to Smash Ultimate, they really gutted him that bad. It's kind of funny how Roy and Marth kind of changed places tier list wise. That's the one thing about Ultimate that's kind of funny. Kind of interesting to see, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, you guys, make sure to subscribe. Also, there's a Discord down below if you guys want to join that. Thank you so much for watching the video. Take care.